to your Monday night yoga refresh. Oh. So we're gonna do just a short class, mostly just move around some, release the hip flexors, do a little shoulder release, so that if you were doing a little bit of stuff online today for your job or for fun, we'll give you a chance to kind of release everything. Now I have these real special yoga pillows, but you don't need a real special yoga pillow. They're nice, don't get me wrong, but you can use a throw pillow or a couple of pillows from the bed. If your pillows are a little squishy, you can stack a few of them, or you can see if they'll fold in half and then roll them in a blanket, and then they kind of make it this sort of pillow. This is basically just a pillow rolled up and stuck inside of a case. So you could make one of those at your house. So the way I'm going to use this is I'm going to lay down on it so that my back, my shoulder blades come onto this pillow, and not much more than the shoulder blades, maybe a little bit more than, because this is soft. But if I didn't have a pillow, you could substitute a yoga block plus something for your head to support your head, 2 yoga blocks if you've got it. Or you could just take a blanket, just a straight blanket, and just roll it up. It won't be quite as big and firm, but it'll still be nice. And then you can lay down over that. So what we're gonna do essentially is we're gonna try to get the arm bone to lay back into the socket a little bit. So it'll broaden the chest, it'll release any tightness that we may have gotten in the pec minor, these anterior deltoid area that might be from kind of sitting up in this computer monitor position with your arms forward and up. So this will give us a little chance to release that. And if you weren't doing that, but you sleep on your side like I do, it's still a great way to release your shoulders. So we're gonna do it that way. Now, I'll show you a couple things with the legs once we get in position. So I've got pretty much my shoulder blades on this pillow, and that's about all. That way, it's higher up my back, like right under the shoulder blades. And then I'm gonna do straight legs, but these are the 3 options. So I've got this option, which is called Constructive Rest, where you take the feet far enough away that it feels steady. Sometimes a little wider with the feet or a little further out is best. So it feels like this bone drops really nicely into your hip, and it's a steady, stable place for your legs to be. It doesn't feel like they want to fall in or out. Possibility number 2, if your low back is okay with it, is straighter legs, just all the way straight. That feels good to me, and it lifts me a little bit more into this pose. It feels a little more like a back bend, like a fish pose, which can be nice. And then the last option would be to put the feet together with the knees open. Now this is going to release tension from the inner part of your hips, but if that's too spicy, you can do a little bit of support, a couple of throw pillows, a blanket, some blocks underneath the legs, just to hold them so it's not too intense in that middle area there, that inner thigh. I'm going to go for the straighter legs because I liked that the best. Of the 3 options I showed you. And then we're just going to let go and breathe. Try to let the chest relax. Try to clear out the stuff in your mind that's about, oh, I'm going to do this stuff later, or this is stuff that I maybe didn't get to today, and so I'm kind of obsessing about stuff that on my to-do list. Just letting all that go. And sometimes it'll creep back into your mind, and when it does, just come back to your breath and notice the breath. So we're going to imagine the inhale going all the way down into the deep belt bowl of the pelvis. And then we're going to imagine the exhale just traveling up and getting lighter as it comes out of the body. Sometimes I find, like, if I start to think, my forehead crinkles, like I get my little eyebrows closer together. So every few breaths, I just check to make sure I'm not adding any tension right there. For you, it might be the jaw that's kind of your little spot where you're if your brain is going to start to think about stuff, it's going to land you tension right there. So just notice that spot and soften it every few breaths. We're going to stay for, I don't know, like another 5 or 6 breaths here. I'm going to take one more big breath. And then I'm going to take my arms overhead and just stretch over. Let's see if I can let my arm kind of drift down so I get a little bit bigger stretch through my tricep. It can be a little bit stubborn. So I'm just trying to let my arms drape backwards towards the floor so I feel that area. I'm going to hold that for a couple of breaths here, and then I'm going to come out of there. Then I'm going to bring myself off of this pillow. Now, we're going to stay on our back for this first bit of movement because we're going to do some release for the hip flexor. So first, once you've taken out from under you whatever was under you, and give yourself a chance to sort of release your upper back. Ugh. You can do a little, like I love to do this where I reach my arms up and then rock, because it kind of gets the muscle that lives under and between the shoulder blades a little bit pressed into the floor. That feels really nice. And then just kind of releasing the arms feels good. Now, we're going to start with this position with the legs. Again, this is a resting position. It's not exactly like you would do with bridge pose. That would be a little tighter in against the body. This is a little looser than that. And again, you might know it as constructive rest position or something like that, but it's got other names, but that's probably the most common. Now we're going to do a sequence of 3 movements with the leg. So the first movement is going to be stretching the leg out and then bringing the knee in straight down the center. We're going to do that 3 times. Then we're going to stretch the leg out and bring the knee to the outside, to the right corner, if it's the right knee, left side the other way. But we're going to bring it to the outside edge, and that we're going to do 3 times. And then we're going to bring, this is my right leg, we're going to bring it across towards the left side, okay? So we're going to do all 3 movements with the leg 3 times each. The upper body is going to do a little curl. So we're going to kind of wake up our abs a little bit. So we're going to take the hands behind the head, elbows kind of broad, press your head back into your hand, and the upper body will just curl up. And there's a danger of like pulling with your neck. Instead, try to press your head back so that we're really asking the abs to do the work here, and the head and neck are staying nice and stable, okay? So if you feel like you're going to bully yourself by pulling too hard, you can take one arm down and just use one hand, and then when you do the other leg, you'll switch sides. Okay, so I'm going to start with this constructive rest position. Take a nice big breath, and then just feel how your hips are right now. Compare the left to the right. Is there any difference between the two at this moment? And then we're going to see if there's a change. So we're going to, if the floor is slippery enough, you're just going to pick up your right toes, stretch that leg all the way out, and toes pointing up, try to open up and stretch right through the front of that hip. And then as you exhale, bring the knee in, curl up towards that knee. Foot goes to the ground, stretch out, toes up, nice big, long stretch, curl in. And then one more like that, nice and slow, but reach out, feel that hip flexor open up. and then curl in. Okay, so now we're going to do the outside corner. So we're going to stretch out. Toes are still going to point up for this part. Then we're going to bring the leg to the outside, curling up. Stretch out nice and long. Reach through the hip. Bring it up to the outside. Stretching it out. Turn the toes up, and then bring it to the outside. And now we're going to go to the inside, and we're going to add a little bit of a twist to it. So as I stretch through that leg, I'm going to then come up towards the left and just twist that left elbow up toward that right knee. Stretch out nice and long. Bring in the elbow up. I'm not trying to get way up off the floor. This is a really gentle, small movement. We're just strengthening and releasing the hip flexors at the same time. So we're going to let go of the head. Take that leg one more time out nice and long. Rotate it from the outside to the inside, just really gently a couple times. And then bring the leg in as slow as you can. Put it back on the floor in that constructive rest position next to your left leg. Take a big breath, exhale, let go. And then just the way it feels, notice if it feels like, actually, even physically, I can feel that this right hip is actually a little, I've got more room to stick my thumb in right at that point where my hip flexor starts. So there's a sense that my right hip is a little lower, and even putting my thumb in here, I can feel there's a release in the tissue. That's kind of cool. I don't always feel that, so that's neat. So notice what you've got. There might be no difference. So the muscles that we're dealing with here with the hip flexor are so deep. The only place we really find that we can intersect with them is right here over the hip, or if we dig down into the bowl of the pelvis and move some internal organs around. And so we don't want to do that. That's kind of aggressive, y'all. But this is a nice way to sort of access a release in this area kind of gently and with some movement, so we also have the opportunity to get a little stronger too. Okay, so I've lectured enough. So whether you feel something or you don't, we're doing the other side. So we're going to leave the right leg alone. The left leg is the one we're going to move now. So I'm going to put my hands behind my head, press the head back. Pick the toes up, slide. If you can, slide your leg out and stretch it out. And then we're going to bring it right down straight through the center and curl up. Now, if for any reason your foot won't slide, like the floor is kind of sticky, just lift it just barely off the floor so you can slide it all the way out and then curl it in. Sliding lets it release a little bit more, but it'll work as long as you don't lift the leg too high. Stretch it out. Oh, it feels good. Curl it in. All right, so then we're going to do the outside corner. So starting with stretching that left leg out and bringing it towards that left elbow, curl it in. Stretching that left leg out, bringing it towards the elbow. Stretch it out there. Bring it towards the elbow. And then we're going across with a bit of a twist. So we're going to stretch that leg out, spread the toes apart, come towards the right, stretch it out, bring it towards the right. And then one more time, just reach it out there, really get a good stretch on it, curl it in. All right, now we're gonna let go of our head, stretch that leg all the way out, and then just really gently sort of pivot it from the inside turn to the outside turn. So we're just coming back to those three kind of placements between internal, external rotation, and right down the center. And then we're just gonna draw that foot back in. Put it next to your right hip, put the legs next to each other, and then notice and feel. Is there a sense that anything shifted there? Feels pretty good to me. So this is a really great little, really gentle way to sort of add movement to the core and to the hip flexor area, and also give ourselves a nice release. And if this is a sensitive area for you, this is a good place to start for sure, because it's a lot of work, really. Some folks are not as tight in the hip flexors, and for them, some of the other poses we're going to do might be better. So we're going to get everybody. All right, so we're going to take a moment. I'm rolled to my side for now, and then I'm going to push myself upright. Now, Some people, we find it really easy to sit on the floor, and some of us find it really challenging to sit cross-legged on the floor. So if you're in the challenging camp, and when you try to sit cross-legged on the floor, your knees are up in your armpits, it's helpful to sit up. So you can sit on a pillow, you can sit on a block, you can sit on a blanket. Just elevating the hips will give your body a little better chance of kind of sitting upright. Now we're gonna make this kind of a loose shape, so I'm gonna cross just at my ankles. Right now I have my left ankle on top. I'm gonna switch that in a little bit. This is my more comfortable way to be. So we're gonna do these little Sufi rolls. So we're gonna roll back kind of with a rounded spine over to the side, push the rib cage and the pelvis forward, and then coming over. So we're tilting the pelvis back so it rounds the back, pushing the pelvis forward over to the side. So we're just moving the pelvis around along with the rib cage. Apparently it's not been long enough since I ate lunch. My belly is going, All right, one more time around. So I'm gonna stop here in the front and come back up to center, and then I'm gonna switch which ankle is on top and go the opposite direction. So I'm gonna go over to my left first now. Just roll the torso. So we're letting the pelvis tilt, letting the rib cage move, and I'm trying to get some movement around the middle of my back. Oh, that place can get sticky. Sometimes we have back pain because we don't actually move the muscle enough. There's lots of reasons for back pain. So when I get to the front, I'm going to pause. But sometimes that reason is that we just get a lot of tension built into the system. Our spine is really meant to be quite flexible and very, flexible is maybe the wrong word, it's maybe overused word, responsive though. Like, you know, the spine should almost act like a spring or like a shock absorber, so that when we move around in the world, there's a kind of rhythmic flexibility or movement pattern that happens. Our hips should move really smoothly and you know, almost with a kind of glide to them. But often, you know, all these muscles get really tight, and then we don't move in that kind of gliding, fluid, rhythmic way. Instead, move. I sometimes like to think I move like a giant ox, through life. And so, if I can do some yoga first, it makes me feel a little more gazelle-like, a little more, a little more fluid. So we're going to do this little movement pattern called the washing machine. So I'm twisting. This is an easier way to get movement in the ribs. So I'm just turning the ribs back and forth, letting the arms kind of go along the ride. Okay, so I'm going to stop with the twist going towards the right leg because that's the one that's in front now. I'm going to draw that knee up, sit up nice and tall, and just give myself a little more room to twist into it. Be too aggressive, but let yourself have a little bit of movement in the shoulder blades. So I'd like to take the left shoulder blade forward, right shoulder blade back, let that go, do it again, let that go, feels good, do it again, a little bit of movement in that upper back. Alright, so we're going to let that go, and then I'm going to see if I can get this right leg to come up on top of my left leg. So some people will find it easier to do this with the knees on top of each other. I like to put a block up front, which could be anything really, it doesn't have to be a block, something that's sort of the height of your leg, and then kind of bring my leg across like that. So when I look down, my thighs almost make a square. They're parallel to each other rather than sticking out like a W. That might be the right letter. They're not out at angles. How's that? We're in a little bit more snug. Now this is really asking a lot of my outer hips, and so if I need to lean back a little bit, that might be the place to start with this pose. Some people can lean forward and put their elbows down on the floor. I like to just do a little bit of a lean because that's enough. There's enough sensation happening in the outer hip for me just putting the legs in this position. And so always when we're doing yoga, we want to feel our way through, like how far is the right amount to go. And once you feel something, pause there. Don't go any further yet. Give yourself a chance to kind of feel your body integrate that. This is my personal advice. You get to do what you want, but it's how I would roll. So just considering it. Take like another minute or so here. So I'm not going anywhere right away. Just kind of breathing, being steady. Two more breaths. And then we're going to lean back and just sort of unwind the legs here. Okay. And then you can give yourself a little movement in the legs. Sometimes it feels really nice again to kind of come back to some movement in your spine. You want to do some interpretive dance, I'm not going to stop you. I'm a fan of interpretive dance. Before that takes off, I'm going to do the opposite side of my twist. So I'm going to put my left leg up on top, sit up nice and tall, turn to the left, and then just pausing with that. And you can wrap your legs tighter or you can leave them loose like I'm doing. But just pausing with that movement, and then I'm going to do this little action with the shoulder blades. Right shoulder blade goes forward, left shoulder blade goes down, and then release that. And then bring them around again and release it. I like moving the shoulder blades on the back. There's so much opportunity for collagen fibers to grow in between the layers. Oh, and make them sticky and hard to move. Especially if you have shoulders that tend to be a little sore, a little tight. It's nice to move the shoulder blades. So one more time doing that. And I'm going to come out of the twist. Now my left leg is going to go up on top. And then again, depending on how tight this winds up being, you can sit up more or even lean back a little bit, or lean forward into it depending on how the right amount is for you. Noticing things. We're going to stay for about another minute or so, minute and a half or so. Just kind of hanging out with the hips, breathing deep, maybe throwing in some extra props as needed to keep everybody happy. decided today for lunch to make myself some quesadillas. In the process of making quesadillas, I chopped up a giant poblano chili to put into to make a filling for the quesadillas, and chilies and some onions and stuff like that. And poblano chilies are not that spicy. In my brain, they're not that spicy. I said, I don't need to wear any gloves because it's not that spicy. Right now, my fingers are hurting. And the only thing that's going on inside my head is the following. My fingers are on fire. That song, except with those lyrics in my head. I've shared that with you now so that I can get it out of my head and proceed with this yoga class, hopefully outside, but now it's in your head and probably I've made a mistake. So we're gonna take a nice big breath together. Let go with a big sigh. And we'll inhale our way back up. Gonna lean back, unwind the legs. Never know how spicy chilies are until you cut them up. That's all I'm gonna say. All right, same thing might be true of yoga poses. You never know how spicy they're gonna get until you do one. So we're gonna take the legs out in kind of in a wide V. I need a blanket because it's helpful. Again, for some of us, sitting up on the blanket is gonna be a really good idea. For me, I like to have a little bend in the knee. And so the blanket gives me a little bit of structure so that I can bend the knee a little bit and without really having to work too hard. It sounds kind of good at the time. So in any case, if you need a little extra support under your knee but you want a bigger bend than a blanket can provide, you can certainly throw in some throw pillows or little roll of bed pillow, put one under each knee. Okay, so we've got a V. I'm not out as far as my legs will go. I'm being a little bit conservative with the outside of my hip joint. Now before we do anything else, we're gonna do a little bit of release for the neck. Now, the neck is tricky and you wanna have a lot of respect for your neck because there's a lot of nerve endings that come out of the side of the neck, come out of the back of the skull and come down the sides of our neck here and wind up running under the collarbone and out to the arms and the carotid artery and the jugular vein, and just there's all kinds of really important things that happen right in this area. However, near the surface are two muscles that are really nice to stretch. So one connects the collarbone, the breastbone, and the spot on our skull just behind our jaw. So that muscle right there, pretty close to the surface on both sides. And then there's a muscle that connects the shoulder blade to the back of the skull. And those muscles are nice to stretch. And we're gonna kind of do that by moving the head at a diagonal. So we're not gonna put any undue pressure on the vertebrae or the discs of this neck, but we're gonna try to see if we can release these muscles. Now these two muscles act almost like two bridge girders to hold the skull in place in a nice way on the spine. So when they get a little bit tight, maybe because we've had to, I don't know if you do this when you work on a computer, but I tend to kind of lean into it. And so sometimes the muscles will tighten up for that reason, or sleep patterns, or all kinds of things. So it's nice to release these muscles. So here's how we're gonna do it. I'm gonna start with the right side, because that's usually my tighter side. You can decide which side you wanna start with. But I'm gonna take my chin, essentially, or this part of my jaw, away from my collarbone. So I'm gonna go at a diagonal to the left with my head, and then I'm gonna take my collarbone down to the diagonal on the right. So the muscle that I'm stretching lives between those 2 points. You might feel a lot of sensation here, you might not feel that much. Don't worry about trying to get a lot of sensation again. Lots of healthy respect for the neck, y'all. And for me, just kind of, as the muscle starts to loosen, just seeing if I can bring the collarbone a little further back is usually helpful without moving the skull too much more. Take one more big breath here. Now I'm gonna stay on my right side, but I'm gonna bring the collarbone back so the pressure's off, and then I'm gonna take the back of my skull and move it away from my shoulder blade. So I'm gonna go to the diagonal to the left with my head, and then take my shoulder blade and pull it down and to the right, okay? So I'm gonna feel that on the back of my neck. That's the levator scapulae muscle. That guy helps with this other one in the front, sternocleidomastoid. great names. Sort of names that you might give to dinosaurs or, you know, something like that. Okay, so when you feel the muscle soften, bring the shoulder blade back. You can give the shoulder blade a little bit of movement just to sort of release, and then let your head gently float back up to the surface. Now again, you might feel these kind of tug points on the skull. So just take a moment. You can move the shoulders around and notice if it feels like the right side has any different sensation than the left. I would swear to you that my right collarbone is now an inch lower than my left collarbone. Probably not, but it feels that way. Okay, so I'm inclined to do the left side. So I'm going to start with this muscle in the front, Sternocleidomastoid. So I'm going to let my head again, I want to take the back of my jaw away from my collarbone. So I'm going on the diagonal to the right, and then I'm going to pull my left collarbone down a bit. Again, not being super aggressive, just feeling like, when do I feel some sensation of stretch or pressure right there? Stop and pause. And that might soften up. It doesn't take long for me to soften these neck muscles, so then I might do a little bit more. We're going to do about, let's say 3 more breaths. Bring the collarbone back first, give it a little jiggle, and then I'm going to take my head the opposite direction. So again, I want to take this part of my skull right here away from my from my shoulder blade. So I'm going to the diagonal on the right to the front, and then pulling my left shoulder blade down. So I'm just letting my head move slightly to the diagonal and really doing the work to the degree I can with my shoulder blade. The muscle's tight enough, the shoulder blade's not going very far. So you probably got it. Okay, so then I'm going to move that shoulder blade, kind of give myself a little bit of release there, let my head float up, and see how things went. I can do some little circles here. And so for me there's a difference, and it feels really lovely. So now I'm going to creep down into this forward bend, and for some of us folding forward in this position is not going to work out, so you might wind up going backwards, and that's okay too. But if your pelvis will come forward, bring it forward. You can keep your spine up a little taller. You can even just sit up for another few breaths. Or some folks can actually rotate so far forward that they put their chest and their face on the floor. If you are in that camp, go for it. I am not in that camp. But I can do some elbows on the blocks. That works out okay. So I'm going to see if I can keep the tension out of my neck now that I'm being pulled forward. Use it as an opportunity to add a little bit of movement against gravity. Again, being kind to your neck. Breath. Come all the way up at the top of that inhale. Let yourself lean back, bend your knees. And then we're just going to stretch out on our back for a few moments and just see if anything has changed since we got started here today. I'm going to take this blanket and put it under my head just so I have a little pillow. And I'm gonna put a little, just a little, like I'm gonna do this little release for the neck that I really like. So taking this blanket, I'm just gonna cup it in both my hands. I'm gonna use my arms to pick my head up, trying to let my head stay heavy. And then I'm gonna pull one side of the blanket a little higher than the other, and then pull the other. So my head is allowed to really just hang out in this blanket and really gently get rotated by my arms. And this feels amazing to me. It's sort of like what my massage therapist would do when they work on your neck. They kind of pick it up and gently move it for you. Feels nice to let somebody else have control of your head for a second. Although it's weird, for sure. And then let your legs stretch out if they're willing. If not, you can keep that constructive rest position. Just check in and see. Do you feel a little more relaxed, a little unwound from your day? And can you go into the rest of your Monday night, into Tuesday morning with a little more presence, a little more connection to yourself? Take a couple more deep breaths here. Take a breath all the way down to your tiptoes. Let it go with a big deep sigh. And you can wiggle your fingers and toes. Stretch out, nice and big. Give yourself little windshield wiper legs. And then you could rock yourself up if you're feeling super energetic. Otherwise, you can roll to your side and push yourself up. Thank you for joining me for a little after work yoga refresh. Hopefully you feel like you can go be with your life. And if you're watching this at another time, then cool, welcome now. Take a big breath, yogis. Big sigh. Namaste. Thanks for joining me.